episode 5 of the B2B pipeline growth series of LinkedIn live sessions we've been doing here at Kwanzoo. My name is Iyer. I'm the CEO. Very pleased to have with me today on this very interesting topic. We call it AI for Sales, Conducting Deep Account Research and Personalizing Messages. Excited to have for this discussion dialogue today Akio, Aida, and David Kalishman. Akio, I'm going to turn over to Akio to quickly introduce himself. And Akio, go for it. Welcome.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, I'm Akio Aida. I'm an enterprise account executive at Grammarly. I really focus on, my career has really been focused on being one of the founding sales team members of multiple companies. And so how do you actually start to develop new opportunities without your general use of a lot of collateral that could be out there for more established companies? How do you actually start to gain business and what have you? So really excited to be here. I'll turn it over to David Kalishman over here as well.
Hello, everyone. David Kalishman here. I'm a management consultant, formerly with EY, and currently supporting the public sector and the Department of Defense. My main role is I'm an executive advisor on the buy side of technology sales. I assist in the analysis of all those pitches and proposals and helping executives essentially select in the selection of those technologies to implement and looking at kind of the impacts that they would have on the organization. That's my bread and butter. So very happy to be talking today about what we're seeing on the buy side of things.
Thank you, David. And just for folks, who may or may not know us, I'll do a quick, 30-second introduction to Kwanzoo. We are a B2B pipeline growth platform and solutions. We, offer our products and solutions primarily into the mid-market. So we have customers like WordPress, VIP, Zorient, and several others in the mid-market. We also have, a lot of high growth, few different areas. We have some unique platform solution capabilities. Broadly, it falls in the go-to space across marketing, sales, customer success. Our customers work, on large enterprise deals, selling, looking to land large deals similar to what you all are going to be talking about, Akio, which is what I thought would be a very timely and interesting topic. And as I mentioned on LinkedIn the other day, I think there's a lot of chatter around AI, but I wanted to cut through the noise, and have us to be able to focus on what's real. And so hopefully, Akio, you all will bring that perspective to this dialogue. And I know one of the first things, Akio, you wanted to tee it off with was we said we'll go kind of start with the end result first of what an enterprise account exec might do. They complete their research process in an enterprise sales cycle they may be in, researching the potential customer, their needs. And I think you've crafted a very interesting personalized message or an email. And maybe if you can start there, maybe you can walk us through what that looks like. And then kind of tee it up for us in terms of, okay, what is the process an enterprise account exec may go through in even putting something like that together using AI tools? Akio, over to you.
Yeah, really appreciate it. There's so many different ways of applying AI within the sales process. And we can see this through the plethora of new Gen AI sales companies that are coming out there. But one of the most important things is you need to start with the conversation, right? You need to be able to get into a company and facilitate a conversation that way. And so that's where we're going to really focus is, if you don't have too much information about a company, let's say or a prospect, how do you start to turn that into something more meaningful that somebody could respond to? And as an enterprise rep, I break a lot of traditional norms. So I'm going to just share my screen over here to one of my emails that I have set up over here. So give me 1 second while I share this email.
And as you go along, Akio, I'm assuming you're going to set up the scenario here in terms of what kind of company, customer, industry is this right email
Absolutely.
targeted? Yeah.
So this is a real example. I did change a few things to protect the company itself, but this was actually a real example that we went through, and we actually went through an entire sales cycle based on some of the things that we're finding over here today. You'll notice that here's an email that I crafted through Gen AI without knowing too much about the prospect. I knew a name, I knew a title, I knew a little bit about the person. I did some account research on it. So, even though AI is a massive workflow accelerator, you still have to conduct your own research into who this person is and what have you. And this company came in the manufacturing industry. I didn't know too much about manufacturing, to be completely honest. And so I had to really accelerate my learning. And the one beautiful thing about ChatGPT is that it can help accelerate your learning. And so what you're seeing over here, this email is actually relatively long. This is about 131 words. And you'll notice traditionally, well, a lot of companies, they'll say, hey, 75 words or 50 words or what have you is a good, is a way that you can get a high response rate. So I break the traditional norms by writing a much elongated email. And what I've seen in reaching out to SVPs, C-suite folks, and what have you, is sometimes the email length doesn't matter as much as we might think. Because if we're able to actually target and hit on company initiatives, response rates are relatively high. I've had emails a little bit longer than this, and I've gotten responses from high-level executives. And I think there's a few points to note when you look at email data and response rates and what have you. You'll notice that generally it's across entirety of customers. All that data is aggregated, but we don't really get into the nuance of how big this company is, the levels that these company, the level that the person's at, and what have you. And an email that you're sending to a person that is 100 people in it versus an email being sent to a 50,000 person organization, they just face very different types of problems. And so a few points within this email, you'll notice that I try to hit on a few points over here. When we're talking about workforce diversity, especially in the manufacturing industry sector, there's very unique problems and challenges that they have that most other companies may not have. That involves navigating laws. That also highlights navigating high turnover rates, right? And in an aging workforce. And so these are generally company initiatives. You can find it in their 10Ks. You can find it based on what people are writing on LinkedIn and things like that. And the purpose of this message is to write out different points that the company may be focused on and seeing which one can grab. So how I sell, I'm more of a hypothesis-driven salesperson. I make a lot of assumptions, and I'm actually okay with being wrong with my assumptions. If I could get one hook, that's fantastic. And so right here, I'm throwing 3 hooks out there. I'm talking about EEO law compliance. I'm talking about enhancing diversity. And I'm also talking about reducing turnover and addressing an aging workforce. All of these have huge ROI implications, or it can save a company a lot of money. So this is how I've structured this email. It's a lot longer, but I still get response rates on emails like this. So I just want to stop right there. Any questions so far, Manny? If you want to add anything, David, you want to add anything to this before I actually jump into how I got there?
No, I think this is a great start. I'm sure it is piquing interest, hopefully, from the folks listening about, you crafted this email. How did you go about it? And I know, David, you're going to bring another dimension to this dialogue, right? Where Akio is approaching it from the perspective of how do I start the process? In terms of doing some discovery around a specific target account or target enterprise, and what the problems are that their C-level executives, senior executives, are likely facing. And he picked up on 10K and figured out how to source some data out of there and insights from there. I think you're going to come in a little bit later in the process, from what I understood, right? Which is, okay, I'm further along the sales cycle now. It's almost how do I close the deal? And you're going to come in there. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, and then we'll go back to Akio to kind of delve into the front end of the process? Yeah.
Absolutely. So let me talk generally about why is this longer email so effective? Why is Akio finding success on reaching these executive level buyers? And it's really happened very rapidly since really the COVID's calmed down. During COVID, executives were very much like, we don't want to be left behind on the technology side, so we're going to start buying, right? And it didn't take long emails and really persuasive emails or problems to solve to get these companies to buy the technology. Now it's totally changed. Companies are looking to get rid of their tech debt. They're looking to get rid of point and team solutions, and they're really looking for actual second and third order output. So by having Akio do this extra step, now you've caught their attention rather than just a collaboration tool that's going to save you money or another AI tool, right? He's actually starting to hit on points with these hooks, to your point, which we'll get to later, about now how do you actually start to give value with the hook? You've hooked them. Now we have to give value with AI, and we'll get to that here in a little bit.
Yeah. And I know David quite a bit as well. And David, do you mind, like, what David has purchased over $100 million worth of software. He's helped advise executives on purchasing over $100 million worth of software. And just having conversations with him previously, I know that they're focused on big company initiatives. And if we can tie ourselves to a big company initiative,
Yep.
you have a higher likelihood of actually starting conversations, especially in a tight market like we are in here today.
Exactly. Executives are thinking in decades. So when you do that hook for something that's going to affect them in 3 years, 5 years, even 10 years down the road, now you're starting to talk to really how an executive thinks on that external level.
So, all right, sounds good. So Akio, I was wondering, so next, should we drill down into how you came about, crafting this email?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to just stop sharing my screen. I'm going to share my screen to my slide deck over here, because I think it's very important to start to think about how we structure our information. And, over the past few years, I've been really getting into how management consultants or strategy consultants structure their arguments, structure their thinking, and what have you. And that's probably one of the most important things. You have at your fingertips the entire world of information. And information is wonderful, but if you can't structure it, it's very, very hard to actually craft something that can be compelling. And so one of my favorite frameworks is called a pestle analysis. This is something that management consultants use or strategy consultants use. There's so many different frameworks, but to align your thinking on a few of them is going to serve you extremely well. So one of the things that I want to share is this idea of pestle analysis. And this really focuses on the more of the external facing pressures that a company may face within their tenure, or executive may face within their tenure. It looks at 6 distinct categories. One is political, economic, social-cultural, technological, environmental, and legal. And if we think about and we put ourselves in the shoes of an executive, they're not so focused on the internal. They're more focused on the external.
Akio, real quick, were you putting up another slide? Because we're still seeing the cover slide.
Uh-oh. Let me try this one more time.
No worries.
Let me check it. Let me see if I could share it. Maybe I do this. All right, there we go.
We're good. Yep.
Perfect. So this is what a pestle analysis is. We're looking at 6 main categories, and we're just going to focus on political right now. So political is very, very important in terms of how a company may operate. We're looking at things like policy. We're looking at political instability. For example, when you look at manufacturing industries, political instability in countries has a massive impact in terms of how their workers are able to work in those countries, right? Is this a viable spot? We noticed during COVID, for example, when there was a lot of, when COVID was happening, a lot of companies started to think about, well, maybe I should have a more diverse geographies of where my workers can work. So if certain countries were to shut down, I'm still able to operate for example. And we are actually seeing a shift in terms of how companies are looking at new offices across the world. And if you get into those types of conversations, you'll know that there are countries that these general manufacturers, for example, are starting to look into. So politics play a huge part in how a company operates. And so we'll just focus on this very quickly over here. I'm going to share my screen to what you might put in for something within ChatGPT.
So now, based on the PESTLE framework, you're now bringing up how an AE could use ChatGPT to discern some key points and insights to bring into their email.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, this is something. I already ran this query. I'm sure you don't want to see me do this for every single part of PESTLE, so I just did it for one, and I created a few things over here. We said that this was a large manufacturing company out of Ohio. When you start putting real companies in here, you get more tailored guidance and what have you. We're focusing on DEI challenges. But what's also going to be very important is what you know about that prospect. Who are you actually prospecting into? Is this somebody that came inbound? Is this somebody, like, what type of information can you find out about this specific person? And so I put this, but even without me filling this out completely, it still will output something very powerful. Now, one of the things I want to, I would love to get your take on, how you can utilize this type of information about a person and what have you within the ability to prospect and what have you.
Yeah. So I think this is where there's been some more recent innovation, which is pretty exciting, and that's one area we've been innovating here at Kwanzoo, right? Which is this wasn't possible 2 years ago, but more recently, certainly in the U.S. market, you have what we call buyer identity resolution that you can do on a company's own website. So because of data privacy rules and regulations, the scope is the US incoming visitors, if you will, to a company's own website. So our clients are actually trying to utilize that quite a bit in having intelligence about not just the companies visiting their site, but also down to the individual. Here's John Doe, who's a VP of IT from, Acme Corp or Cisco or HP or what have you. And so knowing the person, and by the way, here's John's email address, his LinkedIn URL, his even mobile phone number, etc. So the whole full profile record. Of course, we do give some guidance on the best way to reach out. So, you don't freak people out saying, hey, I already know who you are. You came to my site. But more about, you can speak to what their interests are. You know where they went to the site. You know what their buyer journey looks like, what product pages, what solution pages, they try to download a particular asset. So all that becomes very interesting intelligence and insight for the SDR, BDR, supporting the account exec, or it could be the account exec doing the crafting directly at Akio, like you're calling out. So that additional layer that you're calling, hey, this person actually is John Smith, that's where we come in with that very interesting piece of additional intel on, who showed up, which could be, we think, quite really, really interesting now, if you think about it, right? If as an AE, if you can put the two pieces together, and so the external report, like the 10Ks and so on, like that you're talking about, with some data directly from their own website, first party audience data, engagement data on their site. Anyway, back to you, Akio.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, yeah, go for it, David.
And if I may connect what Akio just said and what Manny just said, was this idea of the research, combining it with this PESTLE analysis. When you're doing enterprise sales, you're going to be selling to upwards of 7-9 people, right? So by doing a PESTLE, you're preparing to create a business case, which is going to influence and trigger folks across IT, HR, right? You're going to have to get over those hurdles of those different folks. So this is information that you're going to need as you go further and further down the funnel, right? So doing this PESTLE now sets you up for success to convince those other enterprise experts or enterprise leaders, C-suite, to essentially buy your product.
Absolutely. The more that you can find out about the prospect, the better it is. This is a conversation. This is not just the endpoint. So with John Smith, if I understand this is John Smith and he's head of HR and DEI, and John is writing a lot about DEI and his thoughts around it, inputting in ChatGPT to synthesize it, to understand this mindset is going to make this message so much more powerful, right? Right now, this is just a very basic example, but you can really harness the power of ChatGPT. Now, I like to think of ChatGPT as an intern, a very, very, very eager intern that can do the best research out there, but you need to direct this intern exactly where to look. And so I'll pose the question and I'll say, hey, check out these sources, right? Take a look at where this person is looking at. And if I have more information about John Smith, then it can give me a point of view of how to look at this information.
That's pretty cool. And then do you have so obviously you're doing a bunch of front end work here, right? You actually figuring out you have looks like templatized, here's typical sources, you want ChatGPT to go look at. You're kind of explaining all that to ChatGPT in a sense, from what I'm seeing.
Absolutely. I mean, as a sales, yeah. Sorry, there was a little bit of delay on my end. I think my internet's a little wonky sometimes. But to your point, you're absolutely right. I mean, as a salesperson, you still need to be able to know what to look for, right? You can't just rely, like ChatGPT is a great workflow accelerator. It's a great equalizer to some of the better AEs out there and things like that, or some of the best AEs. But as an AE, you need to have general knowledge about where to find information, about understanding different industries and what have you. And you can have this conversation with ChatGPT. Where should I look? How should I think about this as a beginning point? But ultimately, you need to talk to people and start to understand what they read, what influences them, things like that. And so, I know a little bit about this, and this is very basic, obviously, for example, but this is one way to think about it.
I'm going to prompt you with a question, Akio, which is, how would an account exec or even an SDR, how can they learn how to do good prompt writing, if you will, into ChatGPT? Do you have any specific suggestions there?
That's a great question. I mean, I think.
By the way, Akio, sorry, Akio, you have a request to zoom in on the email from some of our listeners. Yeah. But go ahead. Maybe start at the top and zoom in. But yeah, can you talk about that? Like how would an account exec or an SDR get better at prompting for these kind of situations?
Yeah, I mean, number one, I mean, it's just important to understand, really master your industry and what have you, and understand exactly what pressures these companies. There's an internal focus, and we know all about our solution because we get taught from our companies about our solution, how we can impact folks and what have you. And then this is my prompt, by the way. I think that's what people were asking, unless it's
yes. You've zoomed in now. That's good. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. But the second part is that you need to start to have more conversations and really get into the buyer's shoes. It doesn't. You need to, honestly, what more my focus went into is more product marketing. So I know we are all focused about sales, but it's about product marketing. It's about the entire industry holistically and understanding how to sell within industries and where they're looking for information. So it goes a lot further than just being a good salesperson. You need to understand the market as well. And that's how you can start to get better and better prompts. Now, this is, like I said, this is very basic, but there's very specific websites that highlights these type of things. From there, I play around with ChatGPT.
Yeah, you're saying it best, Akio. It's honestly, you're going to want to make mistakes. You're going to want to push it and try to break ChatGPT. You're going to want to do it 5 iterations, 6 iterations, 7 iterations. Have a conversation with it. There's no limit on how many prompts you can put in. And it's like going into a corn maze, right? Oh, went wrong. Didn't find anything down that way. Let's try this other way, right? Be creative. Ask it to start from the end. Like if you were at the end, what would a executive see in the product? You can come up with creative questions that kind of rock the boat and give you new ideas. It's very much a creative process as well as it is a structured process with the pestle.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask a related question, Akio, which is, other than ChatGPT, are there other AI tools that you are finding useful in this process, research process?
in terms of the research phase, I use Anthropic as well. I haven't played around with the new Googles. I used to play around with it and I moved away, but I heard it's a lot better now. So I'm going to check that out. In addition to that, I use like other things like Poe. And then for crafting messages, I use Grammarly's Gen AI. So hate to put it out there because it's a company I work for.
I figured you have to bring up Grammarly and your Gen AI stuff, which makes sense for sure.
Well, it's honestly amazing for crafting messaging, right? We focus on communication and that's where we're at. And I mean, honestly, it makes, if I didn't have Grammarly, my messaging, my output would be a lot worse.
Good.
Hardly.
Got it.
So.
Got it. So in the interest of time, I hope you don't mind, Akio. I don't know how much more you wanted to cover, but I didn't want to shortchange David on his piece also.
Absolutely.
Is there any other key points you want to make before we switch to David and his piece?
Yeah, maybe one last thing. There's also one other concept about how do you structure your messaging, because ChatGPT will put out a lot out there. And I'm just going to share my screen. How do you start to structure your information? Hopefully we can see this right here. We use something called an SCI framework. So situation, complication, impact. You'll have all of this data. You have political, you have economic, technological, so much you can pull around. And if we're able to break this down into an argument, then you can start to utilize that into your messaging. So just another framework that you can utilize. Like I said, there's a lot of frameworks out there. Pick one that you think fits your industry best, and it's going to make it'll take your research into actually something usable.
And one other thing, Akio, I remember you telling me is you take one person, almost like your internal champion, into a conference, and you have a collaborative way that you craft some of these arguments, right, in the process. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Like I mentioned, I'm more of a hypothesis salesperson, so I make a lot of assumptions, and I actually share my business cases directly with with my champion in order for them to edit it. What you'll notice is that there's a lot of solutions out there that records calls, and once you record it, you put it in your CRM. But the problem is sometimes your conversations are just kind of fluffy in many ways. I've taken conversations, sent it back to the prospect, and be like, "Hey, is this what you meant in the form of a business case?" And then I'll see one of my clients redline the entire business case and put in. It's like, actually, I don't want my leadership to see this if I'm going to present this to somebody, right? I'm going to actually put this into more terms of the business, and so you actually come out with something a lot stronger. So,
makes a lot of sense. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, David. Please educate us on where you come in with some of your magic. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. One thing I do before even jumping in, I do want to give some tips and tricks for what Akio does, and that's on how do you get better inputs into ChatGPT. So 3 things I like to recommend. If you're still a student, you can get free access to very expensive research institutions like APQC and Gartner through a student email. So if your company doesn't have very subscriptions to do that market research, you can get it through your school. You can also go to your local library. A lot of local libraries have partnerships. I've literally walked into my local library to use their computer to get Gartner data. And then also, last but not least, LinkedIn. It's a very powerful tool. You can find a student and talk to them. You can do it in exchange for like a presentation about your company. You can go to schools. There should be no reason why you can't get access to some of this wonderful research that you can then put into ChatGPT. You're limiting yourself if you're only using Google and not some of these more advanced research sites. So,
very good tips. Yeah, David.
All that. So kind of where do I fit in? What I've been working on helping technologies sell better to executives is starting from the end of what are executives looking for from these sales folks. And now in today's new world of 7 to 9 decision makers, an enterprise sales up to what I think the average is 2 years, right? It can take up to 2 years to sell a software to an enterprise at this point. How are these decision makers being influenced by sales folks the best? And it's through advanced business cases. So what Akio has started here is with the hook. He's got someone hooked now on this very long email, right? He's hit the 3 things. Let's say it was the EEO law compliance. The executive read it and was like, "You're right. I don't have an EEO law compliance." The next step that I'm seeing is a business case where you're actually using AI or the Grammarly Go to actually rewrite the internal documents of the company, providing value from the get-go. I've worked with a company now who does onboarding cybersecurity training. They
Oh,
found the company playbook on the internet. A lot of these employee handbooks you can find, popped it into ChatGPT, gave the information of the company and said, rewrite it as if our product was already part of the company, right? Now you've given real value right off the bat using ChatGPT AI to very quickly turn out value, right? So that's the kind of information that's really triggering to these C-suite enterprise folks and making that business case holistic. So if you're going to have to convince a financial person, right, the head of finance, he doesn't care really what the software does. He cares about the bottom line. So what are you going to do? You're going to provide an Excel financial model that explains the value of your software. HR, they're not going to care about it. They're going to care about what's the change management. What's the training involved in this? What is it going to take to get people to use this software? So you're going to provide a handbook, AI. You're going to say, here's the directions on how you can give people a guide on how to use this software. If you give that to HR, how much more powerful of an ally in that decision-making committee do you have that you can quickly spin up using AI? That's the type of depth and business case and products, or really information that I see successful sales folks handing over to companies, where it's less of a sale and more of a, oh yeah, this checks all our boxes. Let's go forward with this, right? We have all the information we need. Every stakeholder's aligned, and we're able to accelerate that enterprise sale much, much faster.
yeah, no, this is very, very interesting because, as you said, we typically think of onboarding and onboarding documents and preparing that, in the framework of your software as a post-sale activity. The customer
Absolutely, yeah.
success team comes in. What you've done is turn it around and say, you know what, you can use it in the sales process, and especially the
Yeah,
enterprise sales process, to kind of put you one step ahead of the competition who may not be doing that. So,
absolutely. That's been the best. I've seen it win time and time again because
yeah,
it shows it to them. It says, look, here you go. Here's how we look post
yeah,
implementation. Here's how we
post-implementation.
change your company fundamentally. It's
Mhm.
no longer a collaboration tool. It's now your team is collaborating and you're saving X hours, which is now connected to X revenue, right?
Right.
You're
Yeah.
doing that second and third level effects even before you go into implementation. So these executives know what they like. I've seen companies send KPIs that have shown a sales company, you're sending, here's how we're going to measure our success for you. How do you know if you buy us that it will be successful? And they give them the KPIs that say, we're going to save these people 3 hours of their time, right? And then, that's very convincing to an executive to see that type of information.
Got it. All right. So thank you, David. So as we wrap up, I know we're coming up on time here, Akio. Any which way recommendations for folks listening? Well, how would you sum it up? I mean, how can account execs, SDRs, BDRs just get better and better, at using AI as they do their selling? What are your key takeaways? And David, I'm going to ask you the same question.
Yeah, I think the two key takeaways is Gen AI, massive workflow accelerator. It helps accelerate your learnings about companies, about industries, things like that. However, you still have to be a master of your craft because ChatGPT does put out false information. And if you
Yes.
don't know enough about the industry, you're going to take that and serve it up to somebody. So
Yeah.
it doesn't take away your ability to learn. Learning is the most important thing. Try to learn from some of the sites that David had talked about. There's scholars out there. There's people that write about this all the time, and make sure that you're choosing the right sources to learn from. But it all plays into how you prompt ChatGPT.
Yeah. No, I agree, because this is one of the questions I had brought up to you, Akio, right? Or something we did want to hit, which is the trust issue. Have concern, legitimate concerns. So you're saying just get better and better, and just have your own first and call it fundamentals, right? Straight and fundamental knowledge about your industry and about your problem space. Don't just rely on this. It's, at the end of the day, it's a tool. It's an intern.
Yeah.
Um,
You can also buy ChatGPT. You can buy the developer version as well. And you can actually play with the temperature. So sometimes they'll give you more creative. If you don't want it to be as creative, you actually move that back. So there's a lot of advantages of actually purchasing ChatGPT.
Got it.
Yeah.
And David,
then
how
for
would
me,
you
the big takeaway is creative.
go ahead? Go
Yep,
ahead.
absolutely. So for me, creatively pulling things forward. How can you creatively pull things that you normally see implementation wise and turn it into value in the sales process, right? We talked about rewriting employee handbooks. We talked about providing an actual ROI number. We talked about providing metrics on how the software is going to measure success once implemented for these executives, right? So pulling forward as much implementation to help visualize and show value is, to me, the big key takeaway to being successful in enterprise sales. And you can use that with the AI, right? Rewrite this handbook, drop it in.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Akio. Thank you, David. It's been a great session. We hope to have you guys back, to kind of drill down deeper in specific areas the next time we get together. That concludes episode 5 of the B2B Pipeline Growth Series here at Kwanzoo. And we, obviously we'll continue to get hopefully some, messages pop in our company LinkedIn page. Folks, you can always reach out to us, info@kwanzoo.com. And of course, you can reach out to Akio and David directly on LinkedIn. And I'm also always available to answer questions. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.